sparks, counting candles in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
What is up, everybody? This is the Georgia Show. I am Jake Rowe. He is Rusty Mansell. We are from Dawgs HQ. We got a loaded show tonight. Georgia's second scrimmage is in the books. We're going to talk about the buzz coming off of that, get into the injury situation just a little bit. We're also going to get into some recruiting here. Georgia's got a target that's back on the market soon after Georgia expressed interest. We're going to get into that. And I also want to talk to Rusty about who's left, like kind of where so much of the hay is in the barn. Where's the rest of it going to come from? But Rusty, obviously we've got a lot to talk about with the scrimmage and everything, but I just wanted to see in general what's kind of the vibe you've gotten coming out of this scrimmage.
No new major injuries. Like that is the key thing from what we know as of Sunday night. That's it. Like that is the number one thing you should be worried about now. Kind of what's the vibe around, I would say the last couple of days and coming off that scrimmage is the offensive line at Georgia should not surprise people, but I think the depth is really showing up there. Their number twos are playing well. So, I think Georgia fans understand how talented this group is. I'm not sure they have a top 17 pick like an Amarius Mims or something like that. But as a whole, they have a lot of guys who are going to play NFL football. I think they got some depth there. I think the offensive line is really starting to. Yesterday was the Letterman day. So, you and I both know a lot of Letterman, talked to a lot of the guys. I talked to a couple that were there, and these are guys that played, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but they go over quite a bit. And, these guys played football, so they kind of understand it as well. And it was funny, the two different calls that I made, both guys were like, Rusty, where are they finding those guys? Where are those human beings where are they getting those guys? Like, you don't realize how big Georgia is until you see them in person. And their offensive line room is humongous. And I think they really had another good day. I was told the defensive line held its own as well at times, but I think the overall theme is kind of what Jake, you and I cover this both every day, so nothing really surprises us with that group, but I think people are starting to realize like how good that offensive line can be, how good they're doing right now, and how good they can be going into this season.
I talked to somebody who has been to the last 3 or 4 scrimmages, and I talked to somebody who I know has been going to scrimmages back since like 2018. And both of them kind of relayed the same message to me, which was kind of like, this is kind of what preseason camp is at Georgia. Mm-hmm. Like all of these teams, obviously teams have looked more talented in the past and looked less talented in the past and all that stuff. But that was just kind of a push and tug type scrimmage. I mean, you get down. See, one thing about it is, and I've had more than one person reach out to me about this. It almost seems like they may have had somebody there at the scrimmage kind of going around and giving them this talking point. That was like, man, do you understand these guys have been going against each other for like 3 weeks, like 2.5, 3 weeks, just multiple hours a day, and walkthroughs and stuff like that. They would just
all off season drills.
All off season, yeah. So it's really tough for one group this time of year. A little bit easier in the spring because you're still trying to gel and you're probably sitting some guys out and all that stuff. But this time of year is really tough for one group just to get up and go and run away from the other. And it just sounds like to me like the offense is kind of making it ugly a little bit for the defense, and the defense is kind of making it a little bit ugly for the offense. And they're both flashing and they're both looking bad at times.
Yeah, I think – God, I hate to do the coach speak, where you would probably expect a team to be after 15 practices or wherever they are, 15 days of practice, 16 days of an experienced team like this, a Kirby Smart team, but probably right about where you think they are. They got a lot of experienced guys, man. You got a lot of guys that's played a lot of football. School starts back, so you kind of get that energy of getting into more of a regular schedule for the young players, who's going to hit that freshman wall during camp. Camp is now over, but they'll be practicing, and doing walkthroughs, those type of things. So I just think they're kind of where they need to be right now. I don't think they'll have another scrimmage. They don't think they have another scrimmage. They'll get after it in pads at least two more times. At least two more times they'll be in full pads before they play Clemson.
They'll get after each other 2 times this week, and then they'll get after each other at least 1 or 2 times next week.
Yeah. So there's plenty of time for that part of it. But as far as a controlled scrimmage, 1 versus 1s, 2s versus 2s, that won't happen again now until Georgia plays Clemson in 13 days. So I just think Georgia's kind of there right now. You got a very experienced quarterback. We're going to talk about some guys that kind of taken a step, guys that we haven't mentioned so far in camp. I've got one in particular name that had a really good day. I had 2 different people text me about this guy. So I think this team is kind of where you expect them to be, and from everybody that was there yesterday, I think the shock and awe of Georgia is, I love to hear that reaction from people. They're like, I can't believe how big our defensive backs are. I can't believe how big our tackles are. Where in the heck are we getting these guys? So, I think when you see Georgia for the first time, up close, those guys got to go down and see those guys up close. And when you see it up close, you understand what Georgia trots out there 1 through 85 every week.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, the size of that offensive line is pretty crazy. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you, who are you talking about here? Who's the guy you've heard from 2 people on now?
Well, I'm not sitting there saying this guy's going to be in the lineup against Clemson, but I do think that he's kind of flying on the radar a little bit. That's Cole Spear.
Yeah.
Wide receiver out of Calhoun. Guy can run. He was
same name twice.
Yeah, he was a bigger like 200-pound kid out of high school. And I think that, he's not Ladd McConkey. So don't he's Northwest Georgia kid. Don't put that on him. But I think Cole Spear can help Georgia. I think he can be a guy that can help. He definitely played all special teams last year. But as far as like getting into some reps, getting some things for him, it sounded like yesterday that Cole Spear got some run with what I call meaningful reps yesterday. And he was in front of some guys that probably you wouldn't think he was in front of yesterday. That tells you Cole Spear is, doing some stuff.
Man, there ain't no doubt about it. I mean, he must have really done it. I know he had one big catch in the scrimmage, like one huge one. But he must have really stood out, man, because I've talked to a handful of people that were there on Saturday, and I think all of them, or 4 maybe, have 3 or 4 have brought him up. And listen, that's not something. It's not something that's happened before. It's not like, hey, listen, that Roland Cole Spears, Rusty and Jake's boy, right? We're over here brother-in-law on him on the air. We're not doing that.
I've known Cole since he was probably 10th grade, but I
haven't heard a single thing about him hardly on the practice field, other than he's a heck of a special teams player for a while now, for a good little while now. And, for him to kind of be out there, for him to be kind of getting some work with the ones, I'll go ahead and tell you this. I heard he was working in the slot with Arian Smith on the outside, and with Dylan Bell at receiver. Dominic Lovett did not participate a ton in the scrimmage, and don't think it was injury related. So, but that's a good name. Good shout out there, Rusty. I think that is an interesting tidbit there. And listen, if there's one thing, and I've said this on this very show before, Rusty, you've heard me say it. If there's one thing I've learned in this Kirby Smart kind of era at Georgia, is that if guys stick around, don't give up on them. Like a lot of guys, Tay Crowder and Jawan Taylor, and I know some of those guys are a little bit earlier, but you've had guys of late, William
Tyke Smith,
Latavius Brini, like all of those guys. They may not have been all Americans. Tyke Smith had a hell of a year. Now, don't get me wrong, and got drafted high. Some of them are, but a lot of them find a way, whether it's for a couple of games or for a stretch of games. Kendall Baker's another, like they find a way to get in there and help you out for stretches, and they're good for you. And I think Cole Spear might be able to be that kind of guy for Georgia that could kind of maybe come in and catch, 12 to 15 balls this year and a couple in a couple of big games. I've always kind of likened him physically and as a football player to Kearis Jackson in a way.
Yeah, thicker. Yeah, he can run too. He's a sub. Yeah, he was a sub 1100 guy too at Calhoun. So that's a very good comparison. Like 200-pound plus kid.
Yeah, Kearis maybe a little thicker, maybe a little bit heavier. But
Karis won the shot put state championship. Oh, by the way, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And you talk about him, never the superstar. I guess he did technically leave Georgia in receiving in 2020, but you look at a couple, 2 or 3 big catches in big games, and he made them.
He's still with the Titans.
I believe he is still hanging around on the Titans roster.
That's awesome. Good for him.
So you don't really count a guy out. I jumped the gun a little bit on the tag at the bottom. Injuries. So let's talk about Georgia's injury situation. I left it up to the comments to choose whether they wanted the good news or the bad news first. And we're going to go with our man.
I kept wondering, well, what are they saying? Bad news. Bad news.
Going to our man Jeff Hightoff first. So the bad news, Rusty, we're hearing Xavier McLeod did not participate in the scrimmage. That's kind of a new deal, something that we didn't know much about kind of coming into this thing. Still don't know anything about it. He was kind of he wasn't dressed out at all, which is not a great sign, but you don't know where it's at. Gabe Harris was back in a black jersey after being in a white jersey the one before. Warren Brinson didn't do a whole lot. Trying to think if there's any more. Nate Frazier got banged up, but here he's just fine. And Roderick Robinson was a full non-participant. It sounds like that injury might be a little bit more serious and might keep him out for a few more weeks.
Yeah, I hadn't heard a ton yet. It's one of those deals that we're almost at that point now. We already got an email tonight saying there'll be no media availability. We're not going to see any open periods this week. So, we're going to have.
I'm really surprised we're getting to talk to him this week because normally, and it feels like the last couple of years they've gone dark this week and not really gotten back to us until game week. So
So we'll get Kirby this week, a few players this week, but we'll see. I don't think you kind of knock on wood right now. You're gonna have bumps and bruises. You're gonna have guys that are gonna lose, miss a game or two. You're gonna have guys gonna miss 2 or 3 games. But right now, Georgia's they're banged up, but they're about 10, 12 days away from playing, getting in, this game mode here and getting ready to play. So just see where things are, see how these guys. It's amazing, Jake, how things you start feeling better on game week. You know what I mean? Like those little shin splints and your shoulder, and you start thinking about Monday. And we got Clemson this weekend. This the damnedest thing you've ever seen. How guys just start miraculously feeling a little bit better come that last week of August. So we'll see. We'll see what we hear come this time next week. Kind of who has miraculously made a turnaround and now they're ready to roll.
All right. There is nothing more true than that. As somebody who coached a little high school ball and kind of dealt with that, man, somehow Thursday, Mr. Miyagi, hey, he visits every one of them kids on late Wednesday night. And come Thursday, time to do Thursday walkthrough, they feel good, dude.
It's amazing. You wouldn't believe it, Coach. I went to bed last night and I mean, dang, my ankle feels so much better, man. So, you're not going to pull a Thursday at Georgia, but we'll see who's going a week from Monday, a week from tomorrow, who's ready to roll next week for Clemson game week.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I really can't wait. And again, I'm really surprised we're getting to talk to Kirby this week. Those injury questions will come up, and don't tread on me. He knows Kirby's not going to really divulge anything. If he throws the day-to-day on anybody, though, that's like
I love the day-to-day, man.
The day-to-day, throws it on him, man. You may not see him again.
I love the going around about the SEC potentially inputting the health, the injury report and making those schools have to, declare something. And I was like, you know what? You can 0 chance you're going to get 85 players that are questionable. They ain't happening, partner. So the only way they do that in NFL is they find the team, and they will pay a lot of money if the injury report's not up to date. So that's not the case in college football. Those guys are going to be 85 players are questionable this week, and he's going to give it a go. Well, Coach, I thought he broke his leg Monday. You wouldn't believe it. He's going to give it a go. He's going to give it a go in 2 weeks. So I kind of laughed. I kind of chuckled at that.
Well, there was also some good injury news, and I think probably the best piece of injury news is that guy right there, Jared Wilson, was back, and he got a lot of reps with the first team offense. That's really good news there. Rusty, we've said it here before, so I don't mind saying it again. There are a lot of people up there that'll tell you that if you were to put Cedric Van Pran and this kid side by side, that, one guy is a tremendous leader and a tremendous, knows the offense and is an assignment guy and almost never makes a mistake. And the other guy, from the time the ball snapped till the time the whistle's blown, might be the better football player. And that latter guy is Jared Wilson.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've really felt like this was, and listen, we've been reporting on this consistently. We've heard from the jump that this was not a major injury and that he was never really in danger of missing the first game, but being able to get back into the mix for that second scrimmage, I feel like is a pretty big deal.
Athletic dude, everybody over there raves about him, how good he is, the ability to pull, get out in space. The center position now is not just a guy that lines up and blocks a nose guard. You make the call, and you've got to be able to reach a backside guy. You got to be able to pull in space. They move centers around too. So everybody I've talked to, and that's Cedric Van Pran, unbelievable player. He got drafted about where I thought he would in NFL, and he's going to play a long time if he stays healthy. But I do think that Jared Wilson overall has a higher ceiling as a player than Cedric Van Pran did.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to say that, when you've got a guy that can pull like that and get into space from the center position, it's almost like having a wide receiver that can do. It's almost like having a fast wide receiver. It opens some stuff up for your run game that you can do. When you got a guy that can really move, he doesn't even have to be able to pull. When you want to get him back all the way backside to cut off penetration on a 2 technique or a 3 technique, you're getting into the nerdy side of it. That's stuff that you need out of a really good athlete there. And, listen, I have no doubt in my mind the way Georgia prepares players that Tate Ratledge or Drew Bobo would have filled in and done well if they had to play in the opener. I think Georgia, listen, I think Warren Erickson, who works at Georgia now, would probably tell you he was down the list of talented offensive linemen at Georgia when he was there. But they won a lot of football games with that cat playing left or right guard. I can't remember. It was one of the guard spots. But he played a lot of games there. And, eventually kind of gave way. And they're in that national championship game with Jamari Sawyer moving down. But Georgia will have a guy ready to play, and they'll have a guy to know what to do. And they've got a lot of depth on that O-line anyway. But getting that guy back, Jared Wilson, to me, is a really big deal. And honestly, I've got high hopes for the kid. I mean, I think I've got some high expectations for him just based on the things I've been hearing about him for a while. I just think he got stuck behind a phenomenal player that had already earned the trust of the coaching staff.
Man, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people at Georgia. There's a lot of people at Georgia. So kudos for him to staying. Kudos for him to staying. I mean, look at Michael Morris and Dylan Fairchild. I mean, the guys they've been behind. I mean, Michael Morris is still behind Tate Ratledge. And right now they're going to play those guys. But I do think when you look at had Georgia had Jared Wilson not played against Clemson, they had already started cross training Tate Ratledge. That was going to happen. He was going to be the starting center. If they were opening up with Tennessee Tech, I think Drew Bobo would probably been a guy, and then you work around that, get him some reps there. But certainly playing Clemson, and the strength of this team is that defensive line. I mean, that is the strength of the team against Clemson. That is the game within the game for me, watching Georgia versus Clemson. Georgia's offensive line versus Clemson's defensive front seven. Barrett Carter and all those guys. They've got some dudes up there. That's the strength of their team. So I do think that's very, very good news that Jared Wilson's back, and that slides Tate Ratledge back to right guard. You'll have Dylan Fairchild at left guard, and then you will have Micah Morris that will rotate in and play some behind both of those guys.
Yep, absolutely. And they'll have the same situation at tackle. It's kind of become the norm at Georgia the last few years. It's starting with that, I guess, Amarius Mims, Broderick Jones, maybe a little bit. It kind of started right there with those guys. They rotated in young. And then when their name was called, they were able to step in and start. And then they started the next year, and then they went on to become millionaires. And then Georgia's kind of kept that same thing going. It really makes the transition to the next year a lot easier. Silvertooth says, I think people are going to be shocked at how good Dan Jackson plays this season. Well, you're going to get to see it because Dan Jackson is probably going to start the season as the starting safety, and he's definitely going to be the 6th defensive back, I believe. When Georgia
he starts.
defensive backs. He's going to play, and he's going to play a
Yeah.
lot. And listen, I mean, I would say I would definitely
they love Dan Jackson. They love Dan Jackson.
based on
Let me
the
just tell you, they love
totality
it.
of everything I've heard this spring. I think Dan Jackson's come a long way since that guy that kind of. I mean, listen, I don't think he was a liability or anything like that for Georgia in 2021. He got beat by John Mechie on a slot fade route. I mean, cornerbacks lose that one too, buddy. I mean, that's just how it goes. But ultimately, I do think he's a better football player than he was then, and that's kind of how Georgia's gotten where they've gotten. Another question here: did KJ Bolden play? Yeah, he participated, got some work with the twos. I don't know if he got any work with the ones yet, but KJ is going to be a factor at some point this season.
Oh yeah,
that is without a doubt going to be something that we see this season. We're going to see some KJ Bolden this year. I don't know if it's going to be the Malachi Stark situation.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Not this game.
I think Dan Jackson is just a little bit more established now than he was then. You know, like
he should be. Dan Jackson's been there since like the '83 Cotton Bowl, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
He's been there a while. I think he played with John Lastinger and those guys.
Yeah, get to play Texas again. All right, so listen. You've heard us talk about this guy. He's our man, Andy Ludicky, over at myperfectfranchise.net. Guys, are you a displaced corporate executive? Or you want to get and put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur and you just want to diversify? Well, Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise can help you out. Andy's a big college sports fan, and he's a franchise veteran. He's owned multiple franchises and been successful in multiple businesses. His expertise is something that can help you out, and you can use it to find your American dream through a very thorough and consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and your career in your own hands, and this is free to you. His services are free to you. So what do you have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Always thank my man Andy Ludicky for partnering with some knuckleheads like us. That's just you don't find people that understand us like that, but I guess Andy does, and we really appreciate it. All right, so Georgia and 4-star edge Chance Linton. Rusty, tell me what's going on here, man.
I would be surprised and end up at Georgia, just to be honest with you. This is a kid that, we made it clear he went and worked out for Georgia. He went back and worked out for Georgia again. He ran 4.5. He's 6'3.5". He got an 81-inch wingspan. And he was like 6'3.5", 221 pounds. He's just now 17 years old, North Atlanta High School. Rutgers got him on campus early, got him committed. He went and worked out Georgia twice. And that second time Georgia worked him out, it was happening, I thought. And he publicly decommitted yesterday from Rutgers. And from my understanding, I think he wants to take, another visit to Georgia. Never got to do the official visit, so he'll probably maybe do that early in the season, maybe Tennessee Tech, maybe Auburn, with his family. And then I would be surprised if he's not in this class. I mean, this is a young man from Atlanta. He checks all the boxes. The Georgia, very high academic kid. I don't know his test scores, but he is very high academic player, and they just really, really like him as a person, like his family. I think his mom was a college athlete too. And, he's just one of those guys that, the senior year matters, man, and he didn't get a chance to play the other night. He tried to go, but he'll play a couple games here. But you see him, I've had him in camp. I've worked him out. He kept getting bigger. And he kept getting bigger. So you like what you see here, an in-state kid, man, in-state kid again for Georgia.
Yeah, and Rusty, I gotta brag on you here, man, because I remember you did an Ask Rusty chat 6 weeks ago, probably. I mean, I may be overstating it. 6 weeks ago, somebody said, "Hey, who's that player in Georgia that nobody's talking about really, but you think has a chance to be pretty good?" It's something along those lines. And you brought this kid up. You linked his profile. I saw that. At the time, I see you. I don't know if anybody else is giving you kudos for that, but I'm going to right now. You've been on this kid for a while, man. And to me, what's funny is he kind of reminds me in a lot of ways, like you see him right there with that spin move. That was kind of a natural thing. I don't think he's a super polished football player just yet. He kind of reminds me of like a little bit of a combination of Darius Smith and Adam Anderson a little
He
bit.
does remind me. It reminds me a lot of Adam because Adam's from Rome. We got a chance to cover Adam since his sophomore year. First time I ever met Adam, he weighed like 205 pounds, 210 pounds. And so that's a very, he's probably about the same frame. Adam got a little bit taller at Georgia, but that to me is a very good comparison of him. I don't know that he's straight line as fast. He runs a 4.5 at Georgia. Speed's not a problem. I mean, look at the dadgum reach on this kid, man. But I do like that comparison. I do like that comparison like Darius Smith, very similar, but just being more familiar with Adam as a prospect and having Chase played in the Chance played in the Georgia Elite. I mean, it's been a whole week of me calling him Chase and Chance. Chance played in the Georgia Elite Classic last year too. So I got a chance to see him a couple of times.
Yeah, and I mean, this kid, to get a little dorky here, he's got some hip flex. You see him kind of drop his inside shoulder a little bit. Also tend to be like kind of how guys like this get on the radar. Rusty, do you ever realize how guys never emerge late? You never see guys emerge late who kind of maybe take a play off or look like they're not playing like it's their life depends on it. The guys that normally just burst onto the scene in the last, several months are always high motor, chasing everything down, looking like they're just playing with their hair on fire. And he's another one that kind of resembles that. So I thought the same thing about Lab McConkey back in the day.
His name is Chase. It's not Chance. So to make sure we get that right. So it is Chase Linton. Yeah, it is Chase. I did an interview with Josh Newberg the other day, and he called him Chance about 8 times. So I've been all messed up for about a week. It is Chase Linton. I want to get right.
You're over here messing it up on the show.
No, I just want to get it correct for the Georgia show. But I think this is one of those we talked about in state. How important in-state becoming. You start talking about portal. Who's going to stay? Who's going to be at Georgia? Who really wants to be at Georgia? Who wants to put that 2 to 3 years in and not have 1 year and roll out? And I think these in-state prospects, man, once they go work out and Georgia sees them, I think it's one of those things. The other kid that Georgia just offered, Braxton Cowell, the defensive tackle out of North Gwinnett, well, he's a Rutgers commit. And Georgia offered him, last Monday, I believe, said it was their dream school. He comes back yesterday, has a great game. I mean, a great game. I don't know if you saw it. He had an interception, Jake. This guy, they run a screenplay. Offensive linemen release their guys. Quarterback takes a deep drop. He tries to dump it over the middle. He jumps in front of the running back, picks it off, and big man rumbles about 25. Well, I saw this morning that I think Texas just offered him. Tennessee may have offered him this afternoon. So he's blowing up. He's a 6'3", 320 pound guy out of North Gwinnett. I think Georgia's in a really good spot right there too as well. We'll see what that Texas offer did for him today, but I know Georgia offered last week. Another in-state kid, man, and state's deep right now. This 25 class is really, really deep, and it's deep at key positions.
Yeah, and it looks like, Rusty, that we're going to be discovering guys. It's got the feel of one of those because of how late we're kind of still catching on to guys from junior film, and you feel like you get the feeling that there are a lot of guys out there, a lot of them that are on that kind of P5 bubble or P4 bubble that with some strong, mid-season tape this year are probably going to start getting some more stuff, especially when you consider these coaches are probably at least going to warm some guys up as far as potential targets. They're probably going to at least warm some of them up knowing that they're going to have 20 extra scholarships at their disposal. Because at some point they're going to have to make a decision on what they're going to do with those. And that decision may not be right now. It may not be in October, but come November, they better have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do with those 20 spots. And you may see early on in the season, some of these seniors that are on the cusp like that, maybe get some offers based on their early season performance just to kind of get them ready to maybe take them in December.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time. Listen, I can tell you right now, I have no idea what Georgia's going to do with these numbers. I don't know how this is going to affect this class. I don't know if Georgia's going to go to 95, give 10 walk-ons, some type of deal. I don't know that yet. So there's a lot of flexibility at the end of what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to take extra portal players. Doesn't mean you have to take all high school kids. That's the thing I've said all along. Just because they got these extra scholarships, I mean, it's going to help the high school kid. So we'll see how all that goes out. I do know that I'm pretty sure that Georgia's putting a lot more emphasis on in-state kids, man. I mean, who wants to be in Athens? Who wants to wear the silver breeches? Who wants to have that G on their helmet? Who is like, you know what, coach, I'm coming for development. I'll come and we'll figure it out. We'll figure all the NIL stuff out down the road. My dream is to play at Georgia, and that's going to be invaluable. I think I really like this approach of what Georgia, and they're doing it at the right time, and they got lucky because this is the class you want to do something like that with, because 2025 looks really, really deep.
It does. It really does. And that's not going to stop them from going to California to get a really good player. It's not going to stop them from going.
They've already went around. Yeah, they went around the country, and they're still recruiting around the country. Yeah, no doubt about that.
But you're probably talking about a difference of anywhere between 3 to 5, maybe 6 players in every class. And but again, if that helps you, 5-10% per class, 15% retain it, then that's going to be something that kind of can help you make marginal gains. That Kirby talks about just all the time if you'll listen to him. Rusty, what's left on as far as recruiting? Now, I will say this: there's one thing I wanted to get your take on before we kind of got into this, because I felt the 110 or 105 would come up in this. Rusty, I don't know how the early signing period for these group of 5 schools, I don't know how the early signing period isn't going to be completely annihilated from them, because I see all of these big schools telling all of those guys that they flirted with all year long or they liked a lot, they're going to be like, hey, if you can wait until February to sign, then we might be able to take you. And I feel like some guys are going to take the bait on that.
That's another angle. People kind of get frustrated a little bit and look, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how these things are going to go. And I just know they got some flexibility with these numbers and how they're going to work it. Now the signing day is before the portal opens. So the high school kids have a little bit of leverage. You know what I mean? They have a little bit of leverage this time going around. I think it's 2.5 weeks ahead of the portal open, or 2 weeks before the portal open. So there's that as well. But listen, I know people get frustrated when they ask me. I don't know how this is going to work. Nobody knows how it's going to work yet. But after we see one class, we're going to kind of get a good concept of how Georgia is going to handle this. Are they going to add all high school players? Are they going to add 10 portal, 3 high school, and then some walk-ons, scholarship, those guys? We don't know that yet, but rest assured there's some flexibility, and there's going to be a I can't even think about December right now, how the heck that's going to be, try to cover that and figure out who's doing what and what. But I can tell you this, and I think Kirby commented last week, there's going to be a lot of schools that's not going to 105. They're not doing it, period. And but I do think Georgia's going to maximize how they choose to use that amount of money, number-wise, scholarship-wise, whether it's scholarships, some walk-ons in the portal, and a combination of high school kids.
If you draw a circle around the coaches and everybody in between us and them and kind of the recruiting industry and all that stuff, you just bring all those people in and you say, who's got the hardest job? It won't be us. We're going to have a tough one, but the hardest job is going to be right there at the very top, dealing with those leverage pulls and all that stuff. I'm telling you, if you got a stomach for it, you are a special human being, because I swear to God, Rusty, a team can score 3 runs on the Braves in the first inning, and I throw my hands up and walk away. What do you think I'd do? What do you think I would do if some outside linebacker from Jessup decided he wanted to try and get $200K more a year out of me at the last minute? I'd hang up the phone.
I'd give coach.
Up. I'm a quitter.
I had an SEC coach tell me he had a kicker ask for $700 a year. I had an SEC assistant.
$700, right?
No, $700,000. I had an SEC assistant tell me that a kicker asked for $700,000.
Hey, I tell you what,
that didn't work.
Every old head coach I've ever talked to, every single one of them, from every coach that's retired or whatever, Dave Hunter even, they will talk about kicking And I assume it's because over the years they probably lost a handful of games because they didn't hit an extra point, or they kicked the kickoff out of bounds, or they missed a field goal that they could have hit. They will talk about the importance of a great kicker. They will just burn your ear up about the importance of a great kicker. They're crazy about them. Yeah. And it's something I don't even think twice about for some reason. It just never enters my mind. So who's left for Georgia in this class, Rusty? Like, I mean, obviously we got Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry. Those are the big names out there. Just before we're gonna bring back a segment tonight. We're gonna bring back dog stocks, and we're gonna do a quick dog stocks here with the scrimmage in the vein. We're gonna get that thing going throughout the season. But before we get to that, I just want to know some names for Georgia fans to keep an eye on there, just a kind of a refresher for recruiting.
I mean, obviously, there's not a ton. I mean, those two guys dominate every conversation. I'm interested in running back. What do they do there? Osman Chroma, a young man from Lee County, had a huge game against Warner Robins. I think against Warner Robins, I think he went for like 250 plus on them the other night. And, what's going to happen there? I think wide receiver. I think Georgia still got some meat left on the bone there. They have not given up on C.J. Wiley. They're continuing to recruit him at Milton. Don't know if they can make a dent in that.
He looked good.
He looked good Friday night because
he had one ugly play that I thought he should have made, but man, he had 3 or 4 others that were really nice, man. Really nice.
Yeah. Well, I love him. I think he is one of the best wide receivers coming out of Georgia in a while. He checks every box for me. So we'll see how that goes. But, there's not a ton left there, to be honest with you. I mean, they've got some guys in some spots. I think inside linebacker, they're still trying to work on some guys. I tell you what, I didn't really put two together until like Friday, and it's something I'll work on. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of people at this Clemson game, a lot of prospects, a lot of top targets, a lot of guys committed elsewhere. That's going to be sitting there as guest of Georgia at that game. They can't do a ton of recruits, but they can do maybe 40 or 50 guys. So and that would really tell you then. That would probably tell you the in-state guys, because a noon game, you know what I mean? You got to be able to travel Friday night. Most of these kids are playing high school that night, so you're not going to be the out-of-state kids. But we will have that. I'll start working on that this week, who we expect in town. And I think that's going to tell the tale of like who Georgia is still really communicating with. That's what I always like to say. That's what I like in December. You see Georgia doing in-home, it's real. Something's going on there. This is one of those deals where if Georgia gets this prospect to this game, at least there's good communication going between them and Georgia, even if you're committed elsewhere.
Yeah, that's always a good, barometer of if there's any questions you've got. Nitro Tuggle last year, there were so many rumors that he was going to visit this place and that place and this place and that place. And, folks were starting to say, well, does Georgia even want him? And then obviously you see Georgia there in home. He never visited anywhere, ends up in Georgia's class. And, I don't know, maybe trying to have a pretty decent little camp here. All right, dog stocks, Rusty. Several days ago, you put out a story about a kind of a stock report. You can go there. You can go to the MLS. I don't care what you do. You can talk about the Braves for going 6-4 on this road trip. I don't really care. Dog stocks, what's up? Who stocks up? Or who stocks down?
Well, I'll say stock up. I'll say Aaron Smith. He had a good week, I was told. Had a good practice. Yesterday, had a good scrimmage yesterday. Everybody understands my stance on him. I think he can be a difference maker. I think this is a monster year for him. And I heard he had a really good scrimmage yesterday, and Quintavious Johnson again had another good scrimmage. True freshman, doesn't mean he's going to start, but I'll give you two. I'll give you two on stock up there. I think Aaron Smith, as an experienced upperclassman, continues to kind of. I'm just telling you guys, this dude's different, man. In person, if they can get him rolling, they got a huge weapon in the passing game. And I'm not just talking about that vertical route. I'm talking about some doing different things with him, getting the ball in his hands, those types of things. And then you look at Quintavious Johnson, young man that's trying to make a way, trying to get on this field. And it might be one of those things, Jake, where this guy only plays like 6 reps a game, but impacts the game with like a tackle for a loss or something. You know what I mean? So as the year goes on, so far he hadn't hit a freshman wall. That's kind of been the message. Like, this dude hasn't let up yet. Like, it hadn't hit him yet. So we'll see if he can hold up for 2 more weeks mentally as he pushes through this and school starts. But Quintavious Johnson, man, stock up for those two guys.
I like it, man. I like it. One of the things I told somebody the other day is, Tyreek Hill. You watch him in the NFL, and because of his speed, when once they got him established as that type of player, Tyreek Hill can get 15 yards on a comeback. 8 times out of 10, 8 plays out of 10. I mean, if you really just wanted to play boring football, you could kind of just work leverage on underneath routes and just hit Tyreek Hill for 12, 14 times a game if that's the way you wanted to play it and you wanted to be patient with it. Speed does that to teams. And if Arian Smith can kind of establish himself as a guy that can get on top, he's going to be a guy that's going to be that will spread out kind of his effectiveness as a receiver. And, he had a pretty good scrimmage on Saturday, not necessarily with stuff caught over the top, but with stuff done underneath. And he had a big explosive spring as well. It didn't really come through in the spring game. Rusty, I'm going to go stock up on Stacey Searles a little bit here. All right, so we're looking at, this is Coach Searles' 3rd year. You can say what you want to about his time at Georgia before. I thought he did a pretty good job more often than not. I know their offensive lines weren't always great, but I thought he recruited pretty well. I thought he coached them up pretty well, did a really good job in 2007 with a really young offensive line. And listen, you're not going to get any arguments about me. There were some bumps in the road between Georgia and there and back here. And I wasn't at Dawgs HQ at the time, so I don't know what our Dawgs HQ folks were saying, but I was on Twitter and all that stuff. And that hire was not celebrated. And I'm not sitting here saying, hey, I told you so. I didn't. And I'm not sitting here saying take that, because there were some reasons to have problems with it. But Stacey Searles has done a good job. And we're hearing going into his 3rd season with Georgia about maybe this being one of Georgia's most physical, deepest offensive lines yet. And I think a large part of that, Rusty, obviously it's the recruiting. They did a really good job recruiting. But you kind of had by far the poorest recruiting class you've had yet, kind of feeding him for this group. And yet he's just been able to put together having some guys stick around like Xavier Truss helps, but they stick around to play for coaches. And this is a very deep group. And I just think Stacey Searles has, deserves some kudos. I think he's done a pretty good job.
I like that. Yep. Done. It's not easy, man. You got that many talented players, find out the right ones to put in the right mix and to get those guys, the guys behind them, to be able to buy in to stay. So they got a very talented. Listen, if Georgia's going to play, I was in Mercedes-Benz yesterday. If Georgia's going to play in that thing on January 20th, that offensive line is going to have a big, big say. That last game of the year, which could be the 16th game of the year, it could be the 17th game of the year. I'm just telling you right now, if Georgia's in the national championship game, the offensive line is going to have a major, major part of that.
Yeah, I believe that too. All right, folks, listen, rest of the week, going to go ahead and recap it for you. We got Bark After Dark coming tomorrow night, me and Jake Roos. No guests. We got a couple of interesting topics to cover. We've got Tuesday morning will be Dawgs HQ Plus for our members. Those of you that subscribe, we really appreciate it. Come on over, Dawgs HQ Plus, $3.99 a month, and you get intel that we've never told any other way. And it's fun to do that, and it's we got a lot going on with that. And then Thursday morning, we will be back. Palmer and I are going to try to create a video to come to you guys as well after Kirby's press conference on Tuesday. But we will definitely be back with you Thursday morning. And if it's me and Rusty, I got a question I want to ask him. Maybe that'll entice him to make sure he's there. But I got a question I want to ask him here. But we got one more Saturday left.
One more.
Without Georgia football. We've got 0 Saturdays left without college football. There'll be something on next Saturday. So we're pretty excited about that. But for this episode of the Georgia Show, take care.